Hello, everybody. People are joining, so we're waiting for everyone from the waiting room to join us. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. We are very honored and excited to bring a group of people who have a lot of recommendations and tips to share with you about networking and how you can build your social capital through networking. So we'll get started in a few seconds, but just wanted to introduce myself, Tanya Wilcox. I am the director of scholar and college programs at TheDream.Us. I've been with the organization for 6 years. I'm originally from Ecuador, came to this country many, many years ago. And I have the honor to have work with a couple of wonderful colleagues who are joining us in today's call. You'll see Sadhana on camera. Wave, Sadhana. She, as you probably remember, you get many emails from Sadhana and texts from Sadhana. So she does all the communications from the Dream.Us, and she's also an alumni of the Dream.Us. And we also have Hayne with us. Go ahead and wave, Hayne. She is the person who's always asking you questions through the surveys about your experience as a dreamer, as one of our scholars. And it's really important for you to share your stories and your thoughts with us through Haynes surveys, because that helped us provide better services to you and do advocacy work on dreamers. So I'm sure Hayne would like to thank you for all the surveys that you fill out for her and for the Dream.Us. And so with that, we're going to get started. Welcome to Networking 101. First, I want to do two things. One is congratulate you on joining this session, because that shows that you're starting to think about your life after college right now. And it's really important that you start working on this topic as soon as you can during your college years. You don't want to wait until you graduate or late in your senior year. The sooner you get involved with doing what you need to do to launch your careers, the more successful you'll be after college. And networking is one of those foundational pieces that you will need to master or put in practice in order for you to have a good career after college. This session launches our summer series on career readiness. The next session we will have in 2 weeks will be from a panel of our alumni that are in the STEM fields, and working for different companies. 2 weeks later, it will be a session for those interested in careers in health and in medicine. And 2 weeks after that, it will be for people interested in careers in public policy, social work, and education. So we have a full summer agenda for you. So join us every 2 weeks when you get those emails and texts from Sadhana to learn about how you can enter those careers. And with that, I have the pleasure to introduce you to our panel. And I'm just going to have everyone go ahead and introduce themselves. And as people are introducing themselves, also feel free for you to introduce yourself via the chat box. So tell us who you are, what college you're in, and if you have a LinkedIn profile, put in your LinkedIn profile in the chat, because let's start connecting right now with each other and building those networks. So as you put in your LinkedIn profiles, then ask other of your fellow scholars or people on the panel to also join your LinkedIn network. So go ahead and start putting that in your chat. I want to start seeing names and LinkedIn profiles. And so I see Hayne started with her LinkedIn profile. Thank you, Hayne, for getting us going. And go ahead and scholars start introducing yourself. So I'm going to turn first to one of your fellow scholars and now a college graduate, Hei-Jin Jung. Why don't you tell us where you graduated, what you major in, and what you're doing right now, and how networking has helped you.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Hei-Jin. I graduated from CUNY Baruch in 2019 and majored in digital marketing. And currently, I'm a CRM and audience development coordinator on the consumer marketing team over at Nickelodeon. And yeah, I think one way networking has really helped me is that it helps me to create a lot of really great relationships, but more importantly, mentorships. And I think through networking, I was able to meet people that I can now lean on for advice or talk to if I have any questions in my career. And I think, especially starting off, kind of being more newer to the workforce and starting off my career, this was especially helpful for me because when I was faced with any hurdles or obstacles or just had questions about things, like when I was asking for my first promotion, I was able to have a group of mentors that I could ask for advice and to lean on. And it was just really incredibly helpful to have this group that I could turn to.
Thank you for being with us, Ajen. So let me turn now to Marieli. Marieli, please tell us about you, who you work for, and how networking has been helpful to you.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Tanya. Hello, everyone. It's really great to be here. My name is Marieli Rubio. I am a partner and director of impact at a company called Career Launch. I am also, however, a student as well. I'm in my senior year. I will be graduating this Friday with a civil engineering degree from Santa Clara University. So I hope I'm able to relate with many of you in terms of this networking journey. It's been definitely a tough one, but very rewarding one for me. And so just to share a little bit about how networking has been helpful for me, it actually helped me land my first career-related internship in the hidden job market. And what I mean by hidden job market is that it was not posted online. And it resulted from me requesting a career conversation from a woman who I'd never met before. She was a Latina civil engineer, and I just wanted to know what her day-to-day was, what her career had been like, any advice she had for me as I continued college and entered the workforce. And after conversing, getting along, doing a job site tour, she interviewed me on the spot, and I drove back home to my dorm that day with a job offer to be a field engineer at a construction company here in the Bay. And so for me, it's been incredibly rewarding. It's taught me a lot about what I enjoy doing. And like some of the panelists have already mentioned, having a mentor. Like I mentioned, I'm first gen, so I didn't have any family or friends to relate to in terms of my college journey. I didn't have family or friends in the civil engineering industry, which is where I wanted to work. And so really expanding and kind of taking that step into networking, as intimidating it was extremely rewarding. So I'm looking forward to explaining a little bit more about my journey and some tips that I've learned along the way, but I'm really happy to be here. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Marieli. And I'm going to turn to George, and we're very happy to have a senior editor at large from LinkedIn join us today. And George, maybe you could tell us a little bit about you and why and how networking has helped you personally.
Yes, of course, glad to. And it's great to be able to address everyone today. So I write for LinkedIn. I do a weekly newsletter called Workforce Insights, and I do another one called College Careers and You. And both of those are free. You can just go on the site and pull up my profile and click to follow them and see whatever I've got to share. And in fact, there'll be a couple of links that draw out of both of those. So I got a deep interest in doing what LinkedIn is all about, which is helping people establish the kind of connections and contacts that will open up opportunities for you. I've written a variety of books, including one called You Can Do Anything, which is about ways that liberal arts graduates can take their careers forward, and also The Rare Find, which makes the case for the jagged resume, that you don't need to have gone through life in a straight line to be very employable. So in terms of networking, I actually wanted to turn it around and share something that just happened a couple hours ago today. I get reached out to a lot by people wanting to know, do you know someone? Can you help me on this? And we had a really beautiful example where a colleague who's just started at LinkedIn, she's working in a rotational program. She's really interested in working with nonprofits. And she reached out to me and said, do you know anyone that could help me on that? And it took a moment, but I remembered there was someone who used to work here who started her own nonprofit helping girls get connected with the maker movement, where you use your own hands to make tools and devices and all kinds of things. And she has moved on to something else, but she's still got her nonprofit. And I thought, we should get the two of them talking. And I sent a note to both of them and said, here's Ashley, she's just getting started, wants to learn about nonprofits. Here's Elizabeth, who's a little farther down the road, and you guys ought to talk. And they've connected with each other. I don't know exactly where it's going to lead, but what I'm highlighting that for is that sense that networking is sometimes very valuable just to get to know the lay of the land. You may not instantly get that job lead that you're looking for, but you'll start to know about pathways, people to meet, particular types of job titles and job functions you might not have known of. And it'll just help you get the right strategy for your job hunt. So we'll talk about that more later. But the key idea I wanted to share is that you can use networking as a way of building information as opposed to just nailing a job.
Thank you, George, for sharing that. And then last but not least, we have Kristen from Parker Dewey. Please tell us a little bit about you, Kristen.
Well, thank you all so much for this opportunity to connect. And so I graduated from Ohio State back in more than a few years ago, but I was really shy when it came to the networking side of things. I always felt very uncomfortable doing it. So I went very traditionally into my college career center, to the internship, full-time job, just the resources that my college career center had available, because I frankly just felt too intimidated to really put myself out there with a networking standpoint. And so if any of you relate to that, know that you're not alone. But I do have to say that as I was very involved on campus and met different organizations and different opportunities, that really yielded a lot of additional opportunities, not too dissimilar from what Marielle was explaining. And so by senior year, I presented at a conference and left that conference with several job offers in hand just from presenting research that I had done in a class. And so that sort of opened my eyes to, okay, this networking thing does have some teeth to it. There's actually, there is a hidden job market that people actually do secure opportunities that are not posted elsewhere. But I still went my traditional way and worked in human resources for a few years, saw some of the networking on the other side of things, from how do you actually find people for a job, but ultimately ended up in university career services. I love higher ed, love helping people figure out what they want to be when they grow up and helping to make sure that they feel well equipped to end up where they ultimately want to be. So I've worked at a bunch of different university career centers, and really what's founded my career, or defined my career over the past decade, or now almost 11 years, is the fact that I'm a military spouse. And if you're unfamiliar with that lifestyle, it means that every couple of years you pick up and move. So in the 11 years that we've been in the military, I've had 5 different locations, 3 countries that I've been a part of. And that has definitely complicated my career trajectory, because all of those moves are for my husband's job and not for me. And every time I move, I have to figure out something new. And so I've really had to stretch my comfort zone quite a bit, meeting people at the gym over eavesdropping on conversations, sitting behind people on a bus because I thought they looked like they might have contacts, and going on from there, because literally every time I start with ground zero trying to meet people. And some basic things like, where do I go to the grocery store, to far more complex things like, okay, well, how can I get a job in a foreign country? But that's led me to this really amazing opportunity that I'm at now with Parker Dewey. And we'll talk more about what that is if you're not familiar, but it's essentially a company that focuses on short-term paid professional projects for college students and recent grads. And so I networked my way into this role. I met our founder at a conference, deliberately sought out an opportunity to talk with him one-on-one, and we stayed in touch for a good 2+ years before this opportunity came into fruition. And so, you know, just staying in touch every few months, sending an email, picking up the phone, those sorts of things actually yielded this really great opportunity for me as well. My favorite part about it, in addition to just the mission that we're doing and getting to meet with great students and organizations and schools, is it is remote. So I can take it literally anywhere, and that solves the geographic challenges that I've always faced. And so again, looking forward to this opportunity to tell a little bit more about how these short-term opportunities can yield long-term engagements, because it helps students every day expand their network while also giving them a chance to have paid experience that helps to define what exactly is going to be a good fit for you long-term. So as I see variety of majors in these in the chat, which is amazing, variety of schools, which is amazing. If you're sitting here and are a little bit less secure about, okay, what am I going to do with this major? I don't really know what is the right fit. Then I definitely encourage you to check out some of the opportunities that I'll share a bit more about, because that might help clarify some things for you.
And with that, I love, and I have my phone and it keeps pinging because I see all of these students right now in this session trying to connect with me via LinkedIn. So I'm glad that that's happening, and I will, connect with you after this session with all of you. So keep sharing those LinkedIn profiles so we can connect with each other. wanted to let you know that as we go through the panel, know that at the end we will have a Q&A. So start thinking of the questions that you want to ask the panelists as you hear them talk about and their stories and their tips. And you'll be able to ask the questions via the chat box, or you can raise your hand and then we can unmute you so you can ask verbally your question. Do know that we are recording this session so we can share it with other scholars who were not able to attend live this session. So we'll share the link with them. So with that, I want to turn over to Heijing to tell us a little bit about when you were in college and you started networking and reaching out to people. How was it hard? Was it easy? What was hard about it? And how did you overcome any challenges that you might have felt as you were trying to make those connections?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has been there and can understand that it definitely can be daunting and intimidating at first. Reaching out to strangers can definitely be a scary process. But I think what I really realized is that once you kind of get over that hurdle and get over that fear, you find that there are so many people out there who are really excited and willing to share their knowledge with you, their experience, their advice. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I found just during my journey of networking. And I think, especially when I was in college, I found that people are kind of more willing and open to talk to students. They want to help students grow on their career path. They want to give advice and give guidance to students who might not be sure of what they want to do in the future. So I definitely think that it can be difficult at first, and it was difficult for me too. You're definitely not alone if you feel, a little intimidated by it. But I think once you just kind of take that first step and go out there, just reach out to someone. You can even start with your own network. Maybe it's someone you already have a connection with. Maybe it's through your professor or through your colleagues, or maybe it's someone that you were able to have a connection with through a mutual connection. I definitely think once you get over that hurdle, you'll find that it's really, really rewarding, and so many people out there really want to help.
And did you use any particular tools or resources that really helped you to expand your network?
Yeah, so I think for me, I really tapped into my school resources. So anything from career portals, panels, events that, were held at my college. And I also really tapped into my alumni. So I think whenever I went to any sort of panel or event, I made sure to get the contact information of the panelists that I wanted to reach out to. So I reached out to them, whether it be over email or LinkedIn, soon after the event was over, and asked them, hey, do you have time to connect? I would love to learn more about your role, or whatever questions I had. And I reached out to them immediately after. And then I think another thing that I did was I used LinkedIn to kind of scope out companies that I might be interested in working at. So for example, when I had my internship at Viacom CBS, I kind of did a LinkedIn search of alumni that worked at my company. I think, people who are your alumni, you already have that connection with them since you've already gone to the same school, and they're much more likely to reach back out to you and want to connect with you since, you've already had something in common. So that's something else I did. I definitely use LinkedIn heavily to find different alumni at different companies that I was interested in, or even in different roles that I was interested in. And then I had a few different resources that I used. One of them was called We Are Next. It's a resource for students and for junior talent who are really interested in the marketing and advertising field. And they do a lot of really awesome things. I think during the past year or two, they do a program called Coffee at a Distance. And it's actually a huge library of people who have signed up to agree to have these coffee chats with anyone so these students and junior talent that signed up for the program. And it's a really, really awesome resource. I think their fall Coffee at a Distance round will be opening up soon, but I really use that library to reach out to people and talk to them, get to know more about the different roles that they were in. And I also was a part of a program called Women Who Create. It's basically a free mentorship program for women of color, and it's a really, really awesome program. They have an amazing group of folks that run it. I was also able to get a mentorship relationship through that and find my mentor and network that way as well.
Thanks, Heijin. And I think Sadhana put in the chat the link to We Are Next, and which is the coffee conversations. And then she also is putting in the chat the link to Women Who Create for mentorship. So I think what I'm hearing from you is basically really network within your school, attend events, contact people after events and use the resources right next to you,
Yeah.
right on campus. And so let me turn a little bit to Marieli, because I know, Marieli, you're still in college and you work with a lot of colleges. Tell us a little bit about what the data says or the reason why networking is so important, and a little bit maybe about the hidden job market that you talk about, because I know that's related to the data.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So I guess for me, networking, when I think of that word, I used to think of, cocktail parties, you exchange business cards. But now with the pandemic, networking looks so different. You have to be so much more intentional, so much more proactive about reaching out to a professional. And I think just even reframing the word networking to just simply saying, I'm creating a professional relationship with someone, it makes it a lot less intimidating. And even when you think of networking, it's the phrase informational interview is usually tied to it. And we've realized that word is also very fear or stress inducing, because interview, it's like, oh my goodness, I need to be prepared. I need to get a result out of this. So instead of using the phrase informational interview, we really encourage you all to, even when you reach out to a professional, to request a career conversation instead of an informational interview. And so that's just a little bit of the big picture in terms of networking as a whole. But in terms of the statistics, so many of you, and I have done this too, right? We apply online because that's what we have been told to do. That's where we think all the jobs are. However, so 90% of students apply online. But what do you think the percentage is for the amount of students that get an initial interview from that?
Maybe you can put it in the chat.
Yeah, any guesses for what the percentage is? Okay, Jasmine says 5. That's pretty close. It's actually 2%, which is alarmingly low. And it's going lower even with the pandemic, because some jobs are just so impacted. And so a lot of the research we have done with Career Launch, and Sean O'Keefe, the founder of the organization, who has been doing research for 11 years, has found that students who have an internal advocate, and by that it's someone who inside of the company or the organization, if you know someone, you're 12 times more likely to land the position. And I've heard so many stories of so many professionals saying, my dad's friend works at this company. They gave the recruiter a call and, I got the interview the next day. And so just having that reference and that advocate that can say, hey, I think Marieli would be a good fit for this job. Your resume automatically gets taken out of the pile and you're put on that priority list. And so sometimes that's the unfortunate reality, because many students who have connections probably have that priority. But that also just goes to show that, myself as a first-gen student, you don't have to already have connections. You can create those connections, right? And it just takes a little bit of help and support of knowing what to say in that email, and really having that resilient mindset of, okay, if a professional doesn't reply to me, in 1 or 2 days, do I give up? Or do I potentially send another email in 2 days, try a phone call, try LinkedIn? And so trying to reach out to the professional in different avenues, and really showing that you really are interested in connecting with this person. And so the last statistic I'll mention is that, like I mentioned at the beginning, the hidden job market, there actually 80% of jobs are in this hidden job market, and only 20% are posted online, right? And the statistic's a little hard to believe, right? Because you have platforms like Indeed, Handshake, and you see endless positions of jobs, but that's only 20%. And so sometimes just knowing a professional in the company or organization you want to work with, they can create a position for you, which is what happened to me my sophomore year of college. So that's a little bit of the statistics, Tanya. I'm happy to share the difference of cold versus warm networking, or I can do that later on if you wish.
Yes, no, actually, let's go ahead, because I think that this concept of warm networking versus cold networking is actually something that I learned from you, that existed, at least that as a concept. So maybe you could tell a little bit about Scholars, the difference, and how you can do both and why both are important.
Yes, definitely. So there's two types of networking and they fall into two buckets. One is cold networking and one is warm networking. So I'll start off with warm networking, which can be people you already know in your life. And that can be teachers, coaches, family, friends, aunts, uncles. And so myself, I'm Latina, so I have a very large family. And I actually started networking within my warm network when I was in high school. One of my cousins who I saw at a family party, she was attending a university in Southern California. And I, at the time, was still a first year in high school. I was thinking of college, wasn't sure if it was for me. And I was sitting next to her, right, eating food. And I turned over to her, I'm like, hey, you're in college, right? And she says, yes, I am. And I'm like, can you tell me a little bit about it? And she went on and on about her study abroad experience, about the classes she was taking. And I was taken aback because this was the first time I had heard someone speak so passionately about college. And it was like a real person, right? I had watched some YouTube videos, but that wasn't as impactful. And so even just realizing that your own family can help you tap into, right, these opportunities, whether it's higher education or whether it's jobs, it's a game changer. So for me, that was my first experience kind of networking within my family that I like actively remember. And so again, warm is who you already know and who maybe, you haven't kept in touch for 2 years, but you can always reach back and say, hey, we met here, I'm interested in this position, and so on. But the other category is cold networking. And this one is a little bit more intimidating because it's people who you may not have ever met before. They're, strangers, quote unquote. And this is where you're literally starting from scratch. And this is a lot of what I had to do when it came to looking for positions in the civil engineering industry, because I did not know anyone. So I really had to do cold networking. And for me, instead of jumping into the dark completely, I felt comfortable reaching out to Latina civil engineers who were in the industry, and you can do that too, right, as a first step, just if that's who you're comfortable speaking with. But for me, that's what I had to do at the beginning. Now that I'm more confident and I know a little bit more about small talk and what questions to ask, I've definitely branched out. But at the beginning, that's who I was able to connect with the most. And so it's really important to do both because they're equally as beneficial. And a gold nugget that Sean O'Keefe, who is my colleague, always mentions is whenever you meet someone in cold network or warm network, always ask the question, would you happen to know someone who works in blank? Because sometimes you don't expect someone to know someone, but if you just ask, they may say, hey, yeah, I actually do know someone who works, in the, I don't know, space industry or whichever industry. So that phrase, do you happen to know someone who works in blank, is really helpful. So I hope you keep that little gold nugget.
So let me then now turn to George, because I know, George, you have a lot of tips on how LinkedIn is a great tool to find some people that you can cold network with and start building those relationships with people that maybe you never known before.
Yeah, absolutely. So a good place to start is alumni of your own school. There's a loyalty of alumni to the next generation of students. I think some of it is protective, that the more the next generation goes on to great things, the cooler it is to say you graduated from that school. So that is a very strong basis for reaching out. Also, anything geographic. People who are in Nebraska will open up their eyes to someone else who's living in Nebraska. People who are from the Dominican Republic will be open to someone else who's from the Dominican Republic. Take advantage of those kind of connections. You can use our search tools pretty easily to find someone. And be at peace with the idea that maybe 10 to 20% of your outreach will succeed. Don't get disappointed if you have a few people that you thought would be great. All you need is to make the most of the ones that you actually do connect with. Introduce yourself, a friendly opening note, a desire to learn about the field, evidence that you've actually read their profile and saw something that you have in common. There's an art to writing those notes, but it's not super difficult. If you come across as interested, that just counts for so much more.
What I hear you say, George, is personalize those emails that you're sending,
Completely, yes. Yeah,
right?
sending out 200 dry, impersonal notes is not going to be as effective as sending out 10 that are personal.
And the way you personalize them, you're saying, really read the LinkedIn profile of the person that you're trying to reach out to and find what you have in common and make that your entry point. Is that correct?
Yeah, and in fact, one of the things I talk a lot about is it can be the more that you can use the full sweep of LinkedIn to gain an entry point. If they're posting on LinkedIn, comment on one of their posts. You can either agree with them or ask them a question, but that's a nice way to get into the conversation even before you send the email. Follow them and you get to see their material. And that way you're starting to build up some rapport with them. You're not a stranger. You're starting to become someone that they see in their news feed. And the gap between you and them gets smaller.
Mm-hmm. One good tip that I learned from Career Launch and Marielli is they asked students, find 10 companies that you want to work for. Once you have those 10 companies, pick your top 5 and then start figuring out who works at those companies that you have some commonality with either geographic or maybe where you're from, or maybe the colleges that you went to, or maybe it's a common hobby that you might have. You find those things by using all the filtering features that LinkedIn has.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way to make the distance smaller.
Mm-hmm. And are there any very other specific LinkedIn tools or resources that students should be using besides?
There are a bunch of things that can help you make full use of LinkedIn. So I just put up a link for my colleague Andrew Seaman, does a newsletter every week called Get Hired. It's full of tips about how to sharpen up your ability to apply for jobs, new types of jobs that are opening up. It's free. You'll get it in your inbox every Friday, and that's a good starting point. We have video courses up on how to handle interview questions, and there's some simulation and walkthrough on those behavioral questions. Tell me about a time when whatever, or tell me about your greatest weakness. That can be a very stressful question, and yet there's a way to turn it inside out so that you end up talking about how hard you've worked to overcome your weakness and how it's now a strength. And there are a bunch of ways to work through questions. We've got another set of links that'll go up momentarily that will show you how to do that. So those are some of the resources on LinkedIn. But yeah, I mean, follow career coaches. Chelsea J is a wonderful career coach, and she does a great job of helping people stay upbeat about their prospects and not blaming themselves when things go wrong. And spend a little time on the site. There are a lot of people who can become your friends and your allies. And sometimes you'll reach out to them with an email, but sometimes you'll just read their stuff and comment on it. And that's a way to get into their world too.
And since we're in the world of LinkedIn right now, there is a question from a scholar that he's asking, what makes my LinkedIn profile attractive to potential?
So I think this might have been Omar's question. And
Yeah.
if so, I would love to engage. Omar, I pulled up your profile. I want to salute you for having the initiative to reach out first. You are a lot closer than you already think. You've got 2 really good building blocks, and I want to help you make
George,
those
can I
building.
stop you for 1 second? Is it possible for you to share your screen? And Omar, are you okay with that we share your LinkedIn profile on the screen? And maybe George can just go through it. And this is an example to all of your scholars. And George, you can say, looks great. This is where you can improve. Is that okay? Omar says,
Let's give that a try. Give me a moment till we get to share screen.
Donna, can you
Okay.
give George the ability to share screen? There you go.
Okay, so it now says I'm screen sharing. Are people
Yep.
now seeing Omar's profile?
Mhm.
Okay, great. So here's what I like about Omar's profile, and then we'll talk about ways to keep leveraging what he's got. So first thing, experience. You've got 2 really good jobs, mobile expert for T-Mobile, sales associate for Metro by T-Mobile. It shows you're moving up in the spectrum of what happens. I would love to see some detail here about what made you effective at T-Mobile and what skills you learned there that can help you in future jobs. So let me give you some examples. If you were the top salesperson for any period of time, and that can be a month, a quarter, it can be as small as a week, let us know that you sold more cell plans than anyone else that week. That will help you a lot for sales jobs. If you were good at working with people, if you helped, little old ladies in their 80s get the right cell phone, if you helped teenagers get a cell phone plan that was within their budget, anything that you can share of stories about, here's how I work with customers. There is no end of jobs that involve that kind of engagement with customers. And that can be everything from frontline sales to the person who negotiates multi-million-dollar purchases for Boeing. So get your sales skills going. That is always a great career ladder. Empathy for people. Even sort of your worst day and how you solved it. I ran a video interview contest one time for college students. And one of the ones that I remember was a guy who was working at an ice cream store in West Virginia, and it was 90 degrees and the freezer failed. And they had to figure out how to keep the ice cream store going. And it was hilarious and it was touching and it was inspired. And you go, oh, you're the clever guy who did that. And give yourself a chance in the text, write a couple sentences that let us understand what you can do as a mobile expert. If you read up a lot on different technology and you can explain why 5G is better than 4G, tell us about how you learned that. Give us just a sense of what you do well in the job, and that's going to be persuasive. Next area. So you're studying psychology. This is great. It's a powerful discipline. Something as simple as letting us know what your favorite courses were. Tick them off by name. If you wrote a really interesting paper or did a really interesting research project, put that in, and then sort of signal where you want to take that. And where you take that would be up at the top. You've got room to put in a profile summary or a mission statement and fill it in. Let us know what you're studying, where you'd like to go, the kinds of jobs that you feel you'd be good at, any preparation you've done. This will help your profile be found in keyword searches that a lot of employers do, and it will help people know right away that you're a take charge person that's got ambition, that's got plans for where to go to. You can probably do all of this in 45 minutes or an hour. You can have friends take a look at it. If you've got a career coach at your school, they'll be happy to step in too. But you've got the building blocks. Don't shortchange yourself. Lots of great people started out in very comparable jobs. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, worked at McDonald's and made omelets. And one of his call outs was, hey, I loved being the first guy in the place, and I would crack 300 eggs and I would make this giant vat of eggs that would become everybody's omelet for the day. And it's very Jeff Bezos-like. Why do anything small when you can do things big? Marcia Fudge is a congresswoman in Ohio. She worked at McDonald's too, and she has this wonderful line that she says, I've never had anything with an angry constituent that's been harder than dealing with someone at McDonald's who didn't get their fries the way they wanted. And, tell those kind of stories. That shows that what you're learning in these entry-level jobs is actually giving you the kind of skills to be successful going forward. So that's what I got to offer you on your resume. But again, I come back to, even if you don't have your profile perfect, you can still get a lot of mileage out of LinkedIn, signing up for things like the Get Hired newsletter, popping in and taking some of the video courses. And yes, it makes sense to think about your LinkedIn profile, but take the easy road too. Just think about your LinkedIn presence, getting value out of what's already on the site and sort of browsing what we've got. We're a pretty good library, and so much of it is free.
I really like that concept of your LinkedIn presence, because you're right, it's much more than your profile. It's about how you engage with LinkedIn, right? Are you participating in blogs? Are you recommending people? Are you reading articles? Are you signing up for newsletters? Are you connecting with people using filters? So really using the full capacity. And I also was intrigued by this, a sentence you said, George, about recruiters are looking for keywords when they're trying to find potential employees. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so a lot of times, for those kinds of jobs where 900 people apply, which is frustrating, not all 900 of those applications are going to get read. And they will often run a filter that says, we're looking for dynamic salespeople. Does your profile even have the word sales on it? If it does, that moves you ahead of the people who applied for the job without any sales experience. They will have other things. Does it have something about working with customers? It's hard to know exactly what the phrases are, although you can find some guidelines and dictionaries on the web about it. But often look at the job ad and see if some of those words in the job ad are ones that you can get into your profile, because they'll tell you there what they're looking for. And if your profile starts to sound like what they're hunting for, that's better than a profile that doesn't do that. And you've got lots of places, whether it's your personal summary or your entries for your experience, to get those words in.
That's great advice. But also, as we just heard earlier today, remember only 20% of jobs out there or internships out there get listed online. So there's that 80% in the hidden market. So let me turn that now to Kristen from Parker Dewey, because through doing these short-term projects or micro internships, it's a way for you to start developing those networks that can potentially lead to jobs that might not be publicly listed. So Kristen, tell us a little bit about how micro internships can help develop a network.
Sure. So I'm going to add another thing to everybody's to-do list. So you're working on that LinkedIn. Here's another one that Sedana will give you the link for. And that is these opportunities or short-term paid professional projects. And essentially what students are doing is, they create their profile, they see what's available, but kind of like what George and the rest of the panelists were really articulating and emphasizing, my key takeaway is it's a lot of work to find a job and to just keep up with all of this stuff, building your profile and then going in and staying persistent, going to events. And, all of that is ultimately going to pay off because you just never know who you're going to meet and, and what results might yield to that. And micro internships, there's an element of that. The students who create their account but put the bare minimum in their profile and who only apply to one job, sorry, folks, those are just not good odds. Just like when you're applying for full-time jobs and internships, with anything related to professional development, there is a direct correlation between how much work you put into it and what the potential is for what you'll get out of it. And so with these short-term projects, the way companies are using them is that it's an opportunity for them to connect to the students that they're missing. So yes, they'll go big companies, small companies, nonprofits, for-profits, government, a whole eclectic array of organizations that may have internship programs, certainly have full-time employees, but they may not need an intern, or they may be too small to have an intern. But guarantee you, every busy professional, and I'm sure everyone who has a job on this call can say there are things that are on your to-do list that are just not getting done. There's just not enough hours in the day. I know my desk is littered with them right now. And so those short-term projects, yeah, it's great to have a summer intern, but what if it's February and you don't have interns coming until June? Or what if it's December and like last year at the week of Christmas, there were projects that were posted that week that had to be done that week. And so for those time-sensitive, just-in-time types of opportunities, companies are looking to have the help of an extra set of hands. And big companies, small companies are able to connect with students who are maybe not going to the career fair, or who maybe are, but are just not having a hard time standing out because for whatever reason, the companies that are there are just not what they're looking for. The companies are not household names that we've all heard of, or they're organizations that have really, really hundreds of applicants, if not thousands, but are just having trouble finding the right students because, unfortunately, I'll throw some other statistics your way. It's hard enough to get that first job, but then the retention rate after that first year is around 55% of students who stay with their first job upon completing their first year on the job after college. And so many folks are making decisions about where they want to work that are just not a good fit. Which leads me to these micro internships, this opportunity where as early as your freshman year and as late as after you've graduated, you can apply for and obtain these short-term opportunities and essentially dabble in these opportunities. Again, short-term, 10 to 40 hours, all of which are paid, and are chances for you to say, okay, what is the difference between sales and marketing? And you could do a project in either and get a little experience in those. Or what is it like to work for a company that I've never heard of that is doing some really, really interesting things in the IT space? Or what is it like to work for a company that's in a location that is just not on my radar? But, in this remote environment, most of these opportunities, especially since COVID, we're all realizing you can work anywhere and you can connect to great opportunities literally everywhere. And so our platform is a chance, and we're really proud to partner with TheDream.Us, as well as maybe even your college. I see lots of different universities as well that are listed. And so we're really proud to connect these students who are interested in obtaining these opportunities and are just interested in getting some experience, again, as early as their first year, and starting to build their resume, build their LinkedIn profile, establish these connections with these companies. And then very often that does yield longer term opportunities, whether that be additional micro internships or even internships in full-time jobs. And one other statistic that we are personally really proud of is the fact that since day one, and our company's been around for over 5 years, is that we have seen that over 80% of these micro internship opportunities have gone to students who come from underrepresented backgrounds. Students that just are perhaps being overlooked by whatever superficial metric that is causing that. And I would love to pat myself on the back and say, oh yes, that's because of Parker Dewey, but it's not. It's because the reality is no matter where you go to school, there are amazing students everywhere. They just need to show the persistence that it takes to do all the different behaviors that you're hearing about today, but applying to lots of these different projects in order to stand out and to be successful. What we're seeing with micro internships is that the students who are successful aren't logging on every time they're looking for a full-time job or an internship, because fortunately you're not going to be doing that all the time. Hopefully that'll be something that takes a few months and then you're good to go for the rest of your junior or senior year. But with micro internships, students who are successful are logging in every day or two, and they're seeing what's new, and they're applying to lots and lots of projects and essentially creating their own internships on demand all throughout the year. And remote projects, sometimes they may even be on-site, again, mostly remote, but with companies, large, small, and everything in between, that are really helping them to build out a robust array of opportunities that they can then take and leverage, build their network, expand their experiences, and go on to do whatever they ultimately want to do after they graduate.
Because Kristen, I believe the micro internships are only like a couple of weeks long, right?
Correct. Yeah, some last a bit longer than that, but the vast majority are completed in a couple of weeks. You see, though, when you're looking at the opportunity, the time frame, the start date, the due date, how many hours it's expected to take. Again, most are asynchronous, so you can do it from your college dorm room, you can do it from home, you can, wherever you are, you can do it at 1 a.m. if that's the time of day that you do your best work. Not for me anymore, but I remember those days. And so, it's an opportunity for you to fit this into your schedule. And the other piece too is it's a chance that if you have a really complicated life, like lots and lots of college students do, and you're already juggling a heavy course load or a lot of other professional development opportunities like what we've talked about here, or a array of different part-time jobs and internships already, or you're studying abroad, or you're a student athlete, or whatever else you have going on in your life, there are still opportunities for you to squeeze in professional development, like this through these paid projects that you can add to your resume.
I mean, what I really liked about Parker Dewey and why we partner with Parker Dewey is because it's a great opportunity. Let's say you as a scholar are applying constantly to this internships and to this micro internships. And if you had one, let's say per month, right? In a year, you could have, let's say, 8 micro internships that you can put on your resume, but then you would have worked also for 8 different companies, 8 different people. And that in itself is a big new network for you of employees at a variety of companies. So that's why Parker Dewey could be great. But as Kristen was saying, it's you got to be there almost every day applying. And I think one thing that I'm hearing from everybody is you got to put in the time and the work to make sure that you have a good career after college. So I've heard people say, every week, give yourself an hour, 2 hours per week to just work on your career and steps that you can take to set yourself up for a career. I'm wondering, Hei-Jing, if you did something like that as you were going through college.
Yeah, definitely. I think, Baruch, at least I was really thankful to have a very career focused school. Being a business school, I think we were always encouraged to make sure we, we're prepared for a career path, we're prepared for our internships, prepared for our future full-time roles. So I definitely, try to set aside at least a few hours a week to make sure, whether whatever my goals were. So whether that was networking, whether that was, reaching out to people within my network, or it was applying to internships, or even just, using networking to, I think George mentioned that it's not only for jobs, it's also to gather information, figuring out, what kind of career path I want to go on, in the future, which it might be a little bit, difficult to figure out exactly what you want to do in your career path. So, using my network to build that information and to talk to people, I think it was something that I definitely prioritized throughout my college career.
Right. Okay, scholars, so please, this is time for you to ask any question that you like from any of the panelists. So please either raise your hand and unmute yourself, or put the questions in the chat box. I see a follow-up question from someone asked earlier, is it important to have a professional picture in your LinkedIn profile? Kristen has put thumbs up. George, go ahead. I think you were going to say something.
So you don't have to put a picture up, but I think a lot of times it helps people feel a little more connected to you. You see, you become more real. And, most of us can look at our best in that kind of photo. I think it's an asset. If you're apprehensive, if you feel that it wouldn't be you, you don't have to. But I think a lot of times it's a door opener, and it's just a way for people to feel a little closer. The distance between you and them gets smaller.
Yeah. I would have to say my son is in college, and his college career, actually, no, one of the students club had a photo shoot for all the members of that club to have a photo that they can use on their LinkedIn profiles. So it can help. Let's see, here's a question from Ashley. Says, are there any micro internships directed towards more bio majors or anyone in the healthcare medical field?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what we see is that these short-term projects really come into play, really any academic major, but it does depend on the kind of experience that you're looking for. So when I hear bio major, I immediately think pre-med, and the certain types of projects just really aren't projects per se. So if you're looking for, say, hands-on experience in a hospital, that is not the scope of work that really is a discrete project here. If you're looking for an experience to analyze data related to the medical field, or looking at hospital utilization in time of COVID, or we had a project last summer that was looking at access to resources for students, for individuals who are from a Latino community. Those are some projects. There's a lot of different analyzing data, interpreting data, writing about that, the research findings, and so on. We see those in, yes, STEM and those medical types of programs, biology, et cetera, and you name the other academic majors as well.
Mm-hmm. Another question from Victoria: how early would you advise we start investing a lot of time in networking for our career? So how early?
So I would say freshman and sophomore year, you can start to get to know a bit about how the fields you're interested in work. And let me give you a really clear example for finance. So pretty much anyone who goes to the movies, that there are, stock and bond traders that sit at these big trading desks and make lots of noise. And you kind of have a sense that these investment bankers who get on planes and do deals. That's probably about 10% of the jobs in finance. And early networking will open your eyes to all the other things that happen, all the stuff that's in insurance and real estate and transactions processing and clearing and retail broking. And all of a sudden you'll go, there are 10 times more jobs here than I thought. And you don't have to go after them right away, but you'll start to understand what else you could do that might influence some of the courses you take. And instead of just going after a few trophy jobs that Hollywood does, you will have widened the range of things. So your serious work will be junior and senior year. But even just knowing what's out there, really good by the end of your sophomore year to have a sense of, here's where I could work. And there's a lot more jobs than just what I came in knowing about when I was a high school senior.
And I would concur to that is we advise at the Dream.Us, we advise that you start your freshman year. And we've actually built a career guide that shows freshman year what you should be doing, sophomore year what you should be doing. And I just put the link in the chat box of that career guide. So I suggest you look at it and start ticking off. Freshman year, have I done these things? Senior year, have I done these things? So that could be very helpful. We had a great question come in from Dominic. And he says, once you establish first connection, how you maintain that connection over time? How often or frequently do you communicate or connect with that person to be able to maintain that relationship?
I'm smiling at that because I really am lousy at it. And especially moving so frequently, I find it very, very difficult to maintain those relationships. But I had a boss about, 10 plus years ago now, who was incredible at it. And I'll tell you what he does, because I am really bad and I aspire to do this. So hopefully this is helpful. But every 6 months, even to this day, I still get an email from him. Now he retired like 10 years, 5 or so years ago now. But he, every 6 months, checking in. Hey, I saw this article, thought of you, thought you'd find this to be of interest. Hey, how's the family? What are your kids up to? I heard your daughter, whatever, that sort of superficial chit chat. What are you up to now? Oh, I saw this and thought it might be relevant. So just bringing some sort of hook. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. A couple of sentences. That's it. This is what I'm up to. Curious to how, how's the family? That sort of thing. And just, he has a calendar invite that he just keeps a list of, this is when I need to check in and follow up with this person. When I worked for him, he shared that these are the people I've identified that I want to repeatedly follow up with. It was as simple as, for him, an Excel spreadsheet. Probably can get a little more sophisticated now. This was a long time ago. But it really works well. And that following up is crucial. So I would identify a realistic goal, maybe 10 people that you want to stay in touch with, but come up with some methodical way every 6 or so months, if not more frequently. When you're looking for a job too, that's when you really want to do this more frequently. So about 6 months before, as soon as I know where my husband and I are, where we're moving, that's when I start polishing up my network and reaching out. And every week or two, I am just following up, checking in, just to see who all is out there. And if you're in the job market, you got to take the time to really take it seriously.
It's interesting, Dominic mentioned about maybe like going out to brunch. While that would be great, going out to brunch or going for a coffee, it can be as little as a check-in email, like Kristen was talking about, like, so that is not so time consuming. So think about doing both. Okay, let's see.
Tanya, if I can just very quickly add the value of handwritten notes, postcards, or thank you notes. They are super valuable, and I know they're a little, outdated because everything is just a quick email. But the fact that you can just buy a thank you card, handwrite it, write a brief little message. You say, like to keep in touch, wish you well, and you send it over, and someone, when they get their mail, sees this. It really makes their day. And so just remember, it's those little details that really make you stand out.
Great. Here's another question. From Vianney. My work experience varies. I have dabbled in different areas. I have worked from warehouse to customer service and to education. Could this affect employment opportunities as employees don't see 2+ years of experience in a specific area? What would be your answer and words of advice for Vianney on how to sell herself, given that background?
So I'd recommend sort of knitting it together into a story that I'm an operations person. I really like getting details right. I've done it in these different industries. I'd love to do it for you. Or I'm a people person. I really like connecting with people, and I've done it in these 3 different fields. And you can usually find some element of commonality, as opposed to that was just the only place that would hire me. And that can really strengthen you. But the more you can show that you do have a plan, even if the plan only made sense afterward, that'll just strengthen you as a candidate.
Thank you. So Donna, do we have anyone who has raised their hand?
No, we don't, but scholars, that's an option. If you want to speak directly to our panelists, please raise your hand.
And it is 6 o'clock, so we're coming to the end. So I also want to mention that we do have our Career Connections page, and maybe you can grab that, Sadana, from our website. You can go to our website, to the Scholar Hub, and there's a specific page that has all kinds of resources for you, including lots of networking resources. So Sadana just put it in the chat box. So visit our Career Connections page.
Tanya, could I also just pick up on Valeria's question about company culture?
Yes, please.
So as much as I love LinkedIn products, I think the go-to place for this is Glassdoor, and that has employee reviews from all over. And one little tip in reading them, leave out the 10% of the most negative and the 10% of the most positive. There are always going to be a few sort of people who are trying to kiss up and get favor or were plants by the HR department. So the ones that say this is paradise and I've never worked in a better place, maybe move those to the side. There's another 10% of people who just are never happy anywhere. But the ones in the middle, those will tell you either this is a really intense place, but you got to be willing to work long hours, or this is a very friendly, comfortable place, but you're not going to get promoted very fast. And you can just go, okay, this is the kind of place I'd thrive in, or this is a character element that would be tough. But those are pretty raw and pretty candid. And you'll get a sense of this feels like where I want to work, or this might be good for my roommate, but it's not good for me.
Great, thank you. Okay, and I think with that, we're coming to the hour. Scholars, join us in the follow-up sessions that we will have through the summer. Thank you so much, Kristen, George, Marielle, and Hey Jane for joining us today. I know that you gave a lot of valuable information, and I'm sure the scholars are thankful for that. Thank you, scholars, for joining us. Connect via LinkedIn, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Did I forget anything, Sadhana, or any last words from anyone?
Nope, I think you're good. Thank you very much to the panel. I certainly learned a lot today. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, and have a good night, everybody.
Thanks
Good
so
night.
much.
It was an honor,
Good
Tanya.
night.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
us.
so much. And
Bye.
I'll stay here for a couple more minutes in case scholars have any other questions about the Dream.Us or scholarship or anything otherwise.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks,
you.
Hey-Jin.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen.
I think you can stop the recording too, Sadhana.